It was midnight when Monica, a cashier at the late-night diner, began her graveyard shift. She had become accustomed to the peculiar late-night clientele over the past few months, but recently an unsettling dread had taken root in her heart. Monica settled into her position behind the cash register, the familiar hum of the diner's machinery surrounding her. The low lighting cast long shadows, adding to the eerie atmosphere. As the hours passed, she couldn't shake the sense that something was amiss, like a discordant note in a familiar tune. The oddity that had been gnawing at her became apparent once again as a new customer entered. They placed an order, and Monica watched as they took a seat. But what struck her was that no customer seemed to leave the diner. It was as though they were swallowed by the building itself, disappearing into thin air. As curiosity mingled with unease, Monica decided to investigate. She locked eyes with a fellow employee, a cook named Alex, and shared a silent understanding. With a determined exhale, she followed a new customer inside, the door closing behind her with a soft click. The moment the door shut, Monica felt an unshakable chill creep over her. The diner, once bustling with the chatter of customers, was now eerily silent. The sensation of being watched weighed on her, each step forward laden with a growing sense of trepidation. She walked through the empty diner, her footsteps echoing against the walls. In her peripheral vision, she caught glimpses of movement, fleeting shadows that danced at the edges of her perception. Her heart raced, and her breath quickened, an involuntary response to the mounting tension. It wasn't until two of the customers abruptly vanished from their seats that panic surged within her. Her fingers trembled as she fumbled for her phone, intending to call the authorities. But just as she was about to dial, a faint sound reached her ears, a soft, almost imperceptible noise. The source of the sound was in the farthest corner of the diner. Monica's pulse quickened as she cautiously approached. A barely noticeable draft tickled her skin, carrying a whisper of something hidden. And then she saw it, a hidden basement door blending seamlessly with the wall. Fear and curiosity waged a battle within her. The door seemed to beckon, its secrets hidden below. Swallowing her apprehension, Monica took a deep breath and opened the door. The hinges creaked, protesting against the movement, as the dark void of the basement stretched before her. As the dim light from the diner spilled into the basement, the shocking truth was illuminated. The sight that met her eyes was a grotesque tableau. The bodies of the missing customers hung from the walls, their eyes gruesomely gouged out. The scene was macabre, a twisted canvas of horror that defied explanation. Monica's scream echoed through the diner, a release of the terror that had been building within her. The revelation was a nightmare made real, a chilling reminder that beneath the mundane surface of the diner something sinister lurked. With trembling hands and racing thoughts, Monica realized she was now part of a mystery far more terrifying than anything she could have imagined. It was a typical Monday night. I'd been working night shifts at the burger resto for a few weeks, and I was used to the quiet. The only sounds in the restaurant were the occasional clinking of plates and the soft hum of the refrigerators. But tonight, something felt off. The air was thick with an eerie stillness, as if something was lurking in the shadows, watching me. I shivered and tried to shake off the feeling, but it stayed with me as I made my way around the restaurant, cleaning tables and refilling condiment containers. As I worked, I began to feel a presence following me. I spun around, expecting to find someone standing there, but all I saw were empty tables and chairs. I swallowed hard and continued on, picking up the pace as I went. The feeling of being watched grew stronger as I made my way to the back of the restaurant. I was about to turn the corner when I heard a faint voice call out my name. I froze in terror. I knew no one should be here, yet I could still hear the faint whisper of my name. I slowly edged my way around the corner, my heart pounding in my chest. As I did, I saw a figure standing in the shadows. Its face was hidden in the darkness, but I could feel its eyes boring into me. I wanted to run, but my feet were glued to the floor. I could feel a chill in the air, and I knew whatever was standing there meant me harm. The figure stepped forward, and I saw its face. It was a face I'd seen before, but not in this lifetime. I screamed and ran out the back door, not stopping until I was safe in my car. I sped away from the restaurant, terrified and confused. As I drove away, I glanced in my rearview mirror and saw the figure still standing in the shadows, watching me. My heart raced as I sped away from the restaurant. The image of the mysterious figure burned into my mind. The road ahead was illuminated only by the glow of the streetlights, and I tried to shake off the fear that had settled in my chest. It was as if the restaurant's unsettling atmosphere had followed me, refusing to release its grip. I decided to head to my friend Maria's place. She lived a few miles away and was always a calming presence. As I pulled up to her house, I realized my hands were still trembling. I knocked on the door, my heart pounding, and was relieved when Maria opened it with a warm smile. "Hey, what brings you here so late?" she asked, concern creasing her brow as she took in my disheveled appearance. I quickly recounted the strange events of the night at the burger restaurant, the feeling of being watched and the chilling encounter with the figure in the shadows. Maria's expression grew more serious as I spoke. "That sounds really unnerving," she said softly. "Maybe you're just overworked and tired. Our minds can play tricks on us when we're exhausted." I nodded, wanting to believe her rational explanation. Yet the memory of the figure's face remained vivid in my mind. We spent some time talking and trying to distract ourselves with mundane topics, but the unease lingered in the back of my thoughts. As the clock ticked past midnight, I decided it was time to head home. Maria offered to let me stay the night, but I assured her I would be fine. I got into my car and drove back towards the restaurant, my apprehension growing with every passing moment. When I arrived, the restaurant was bathed in an eerie silence, its windows darkened. I hesitated before stepping out of the car, my eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of movement. Taking a deep breath, I walked towards the entrance. The restaurant's interior was just as I had left it, empty and still. I flipped on the lights and took a hesitant step forward. As I moved deeper into the building, the sense of being watched returned, and a cold shiver ran down my spine. I called out, my voice quivering, "Who's there?" No response came, only the echo of my own words bouncing off the walls. I continued cautiously, my steps punctuating the silence. Just as I was about to reach the spot where I had encountered the figure earlier, the lights flickered and then went out, plunging the restaurant into darkness. My heart raced as panic threatened to consume me. I fumbled for my phone, using its weak flashlight to guide my way. I needed to reach the back door and escape this place. As I made my way through the pitch-black interior, I heard whispers that seemed to come from all directions, filling the air with a haunting symphony of voices. "Come back. Stay with us." The voices seemed to be a chorus of countless souls, trapped in a realm between the living and the beyond. I stumbled and fell to my knees, the weight of their presence overwhelming. The figure, its face now illuminated by a faint glow, appeared before me. "We've been waiting for you," it said, its voice a haunting whisper that echoed in my mind. I scrambled backward, my heart pounding, and with all the strength I could muster, I made a mad dash for the back door. The whispers grew louder, almost deafening, as if the spirits were pleading, demanding, or even threatening me. I burst through the back door, the cool night air hitting my face like a balm. I didn't stop running until I reached the safety of my car. As I sped away from the restaurant once again, the whispers faded, leaving behind an eerie silence. The events of that night would forever haunt my memories, a chilling reminder that some places hold secrets that defy explanation. The restaurant stood as a dark enigma, a place where the boundary between the living and the dead seemed to blur, and where the echoes of the past lingered in the shadows. The night shift at the fast food joint was a lonely business. The only people working were the new employee, who manned the register, and the old fry cook who skillfully handled the grill. It was a quiet night, with the soft hum of machinery providing the backdrop to their tasks. However, the calm was shattered when the new employee noticed something peculiar. The fryer, usually dormant, seemed to be turning on by itself. The sizzling sound of oil and the faint aroma of cooking fries filled the air, even though no one had touched the fryer. Startled and a bit unnerved, the new employee tried to rationalize it as a technical glitch. Maybe a faulty switch, they thought. But unease lingered beneath the surface as they couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. After a few minutes, the new employee returned to the register, only to face another oddity. Messages were appearing on the order screen, flickering into view as if typed by invisible fingers. The words were jumbled, nonsensical, like a code that refused to reveal its meaning. Each time they tried to decipher the message, the words seemed to shift and change. As a chill ran down their spine, the new employee's initial curiosity transformed into genuine fear. They wondered if the fryer and the strange messages were connected, or if there was something more sinister at play. Doubt gnawed at them, casting an unsettling shadow over their surroundings. Summoning courage, the new employee approached the old fry cook, who had seen his fair share of late-night shifts. The fry cook's eyes widened as the new employee described their experiences. His reaction confirmed that something was indeed wrong. The fry cook hesitated before admitting that he, too, had witnessed an anomaly. He had glimpsed a fleeting shadow in the corner of the kitchen, a presence that vanished the moment he turned to face it. His weathered face displayed a mix of concern and trepidation, adding weight to the eerie atmosphere. As the minutes ticked by, the sense of dread deepened. The kitchen, once familiar and reassuring, now felt like a stage for something beyond comprehension. The two employees exchanged worried glances, a silent acknowledgement of the unspoken fear that had taken root. With courage bolstered by the need for safety, the new employee decided it was time to call it a night. The fry cook agreed, his experienced gaze lingering on the kitchen's shadows. They locked up the restaurant, the night air offering a welcome change from the oppressive atmosphere inside. As they walked away from the fast food joint, the question lingered. What had transpired during that night shift? What unseen forces had stirred in the heart of the kitchen, leaving behind traces of their presence? The new employee and the old fry cook would carry their shared experience with them, forever haunted by the memory of a night when the ordinary transformed into something unexplainably eerie. James had been working as a night security guard for the local bank for the past 10 years. It wasn't the most exciting job in the world, but it was dependable and it paid the bills. He'd always enjoyed the peacefulness of his night shifts, the faint hum of machinery and the reassuring darkness. Tonight, however, was different. He had an uneasy feeling in his stomach as soon as he stepped onto the grounds, as if he were being watched. He'd heard stories from other guards about hearing strange noises in the night, and he'd become jittery ever since. He set about his duties with shaking hands and a feeling of dread that had been growing in the pit of his stomach all evening. He had just finished his rounds when his cell phone began to ring. His heart skipped a beat as he glanced at the caller ID. Unknown number. He answered, and a raspy voice asked, "Where are you now?" James couldn't quite explain his fear or why he knew instinctively that this call was somehow connected to what he was feeling. But he hung up quickly. Not a minute later, the phone rang again. This time, the voice said, "I know you're in the East Wing. Turn right." By then, James was shaking, and he quickly hung up again. He gathered his things and began to run for the exit. He ran faster than he'd ever run in his life as he anxiously watched the shadows for any sign of movement. As he rounded the last corner of the exit, he felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that whoever was on the phone was still watching. He eventually reached his car, sweaty and exhausted. As he sat in his car catching his breath, he looked up and saw a dark figure standing in the corner of the parking lot, watching him with a menacing glare. The figure's eyes glowed with an unnatural intensity, and a cold shiver ran down James's spine. His hands trembled as he fumbled to start the car, his heart pounding in his chest. The engine roared to life and he peeled out of the parking lot. The image of the dark figure burned into his mind. As he drove away, James couldn't shake the feeling of being hunted. He glanced at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the figure chasing after him, but there was only darkness. The night seemed to close in around him, the familiar streets now unfamiliar and menacing. His phone rang again, startling him. With trembling hands, he answered it, and the raspy voice spoke once more. "You can't escape, James. I see you." James's grip on the steering wheel tightened, and he drove even faster, desperate to put as much distance as possible between himself and whatever was haunting him. The voice on the other end of the line was no longer just a voice. It was a presence, a malevolent force that seemed to be everywhere. He didn't know where to go or what to do. The city that had once felt familiar now felt like a labyrinth of terror. Every shadow seemed to hide a lurking menace, every street corner a potential trap. As the night wore on, James found himself on a desolate stretch of road surrounded by darkness. He had no destination in mind, only the desperate need to escape the relentless pursuit. But no matter how far he drove, the voice was always there, taunting him, reminding him that he was not alone. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the call stopped. The voice fell silent, leaving James in a state of eerie calm. He pulled over to the side of the road, his heart still racing, his mind clouded with fear and confusion. As he sat there, trying to catch his breath, he saw movement in the rearview mirror. He turned around slowly, dread building in the pit of his stomach. And there, standing just outside the reach of his headlights, was the dark figure. It raised a hand and pointed directly at James, its eyes gleaming with a malevolent light. In that moment, James knew that he was not dealing with something human, something that could be reasoned with or escaped from. He was face to face with a force beyond his understanding, a nightmare made real. Without thinking, he slammed his foot on the gas pedal and sped away, the figure disappearing into the darkness behind him. As the city lights faded in the distance, James knew that he was forever changed. The peaceful nights he had once enjoyed were now a distant memory, replaced by a relentless fear that would haunt him for the rest of his days. It was one of those days, slow and uneventful, typical for a delivery driver working the night shift. I had delivered pizzas, burgers, and all sorts of fast food for the past 5 hours and was ready to call it a night, when I got a most peculiar request. "Hi there, can you come deliver a pizza to an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town?" The voice on the other end of the phone said. I was immediately filled with dread. Abandoned warehouses were places that I usually tried to avoid, but the address was too close for me to turn down. Still nervous, I packed the pizza in my car and took off towards the warehouse. When I arrived, my worst suspicions were confirmed. The outside of the facility was decrepit and derelict, with dust and grime covering every surface. It was dark and foreboding, and I had a feeling that something was off. I double-checked the address and reluctantly walked towards the entrance. The moment I stepped inside, I felt a chill. The cool air was heavy and thick, and it felt like something was lurking in the shadows. But I shook my head and continued walking towards what appeared to be some kind of waiting area. I approached the counter and deposited the pizza when suddenly a figure emerged from the darkness. He was tall and gaunt and wore a long black coat. He didn't say a word but merely stared at me. My heart raced as I noticed the figure look at me with an unsettling grin. I tried to back away slowly when he suddenly started shuffling towards me. My pulse quickened, and a cold sweat broke out on my forehead as the figure's movements seemed deliberate, almost unnatural. I stumbled, my voice trembling as I managed to croak out, Your pizza's right there on the counter." The figure continued to advance, his grin never wavering. Panic surged through me and I fumbled for my phone, ready to dial for help. But to my horror, I realized I had left it in the car. I backed away further, my heart pounding like a drum. "Hey, I'll just leave the pizza here," I stammered, my voice barely audible. The figure's grin widened, revealing teeth that seemed far too sharp and pointed. He reached the counter and slowly picked up the pizza box, never taking his eyes off me. A shiver ran down my spine as I saw his fingers, a pale, almost translucent skin stretched taut over bony digits. With the pizza in hand, he turned his gaze back to me, and I could feel his eyes piercing through the darkness. I was frozen in place, my mind racing with thoughts of escape. Then, unexpectedly, he spoke. A low, raspy voice that seemed to resonate from deep within the shadows. "You've delivered to the right place," he said, his words sending a chill through my bones. I managed to summon a weak smile, my voice shaking as I replied, "Glad I could help. Have a, good evening." Backing away slowly, I turned around and forced myself not to run. As I reached the exit, I dared to steal a glance back. The figure was gone, but an eerie feeling lingered in the air. I practically sprinted to my car, my breaths coming in ragged gasps. Slamming the door shut, I locked it and started the engine, my heart still racing. As I drove away, the image of the figure's unsettling grin haunted my thoughts, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just narrowly escaped something far more sinister than an ordinary delivery. To this day, I avoid that side of town, and the memory of that night continues to send shivers down my spine whenever I pass by an abandoned warehouse. The night shift started off as any other. It was a seemingly uneventful Thursday night, and the restaurant was already winding down. I was the only one left, just me and the chef, working the closing shift. The night dragged on, and the chef and I had worked hard cleaning up from dinner after the last of our customers had gone home. With the job almost finished, I knew I still had one last chore to complete: to take the mascot costume that was stored in the back of the kitchen and hang it up where it belonged. The costume was an old and faded clown, a relic believed to dating back almost 2 centuries. I had seen it 100 times, stepped right by it. But tonight, as I stood in its presence, it seemed different. I could almost feel it watching me, eerily silent and still, its eyes stitched in an eerie smirk. I nervously hung it up, pushing it to the back of my thoughts. But as I turned to leave, a chill ran up my spine. because I could swear I had heard a faint giggle, a playful titter. I was sure I had imagined it, but the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I couldn't shake the feeling that something just wasn't right. Hours passed, and I quickly lost track of time. I was determined to finish my shift as quickly as possible. I just wanted to get home and out of the restaurant. But then, as if out of a nightmare, I felt a sudden chill. Something was off, and I heard a soft whisper coming from the darkened corner of the kitchen. I slowly made my way across the room, and I was almost too terrified to look when suddenly I saw it. The clown costume, no longer lifeless or still. It was swaying, almost as if it were dancing, and I thought I heard laugh, the same one I heard before, but now louder, more menacing. The laughter echoed in the kitchen, a haunting melody that seemed to emanate from the very fabric of the clown costume. My heart raced, and a cold sweat formed on my brow as I stared in disbelief. The costume, once a harmless relic, now swayed with an uncanny rhythm, its tattered fringes fluttering as if propelled by an invisible force. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to flee from the kitchen and never look back. But a morbid curiosity held me in place, my eyes locked onto the malevolent dance of the clown. It was as though some malevolent spirit had taken residence within the fabric, animating it with a sinister glee. As the laughter grew louder, a sense of dread enveloped me. I stumbled back, knocking over a stack of trays that clattered to the floor. The clown's gaze seemed to follow my every move, its stitched smile twisting into a maleficent grin. Summoning all my courage, I reached for the mascot costume, fingers trembling as they brushed against the coarse fabric. The moment my hand made contact, a jolt of energy surged through me, sending shockwaves of terror to the depths of my soul. The clown's laughter transformed into a sinister hiss, as if it reveled in my fear. With a surge of adrenaline, I yanked the costume off its hanger, determined to put an end to this macabre spectacle. But as I held the lifeless form in my hands, it resisted. It writhed and squirmed, its limbs contorting in unnatural ways as if trying to break free from my grasp. "Stop it!" I shouted, my voice quivering with a mix of terror and frustration. But the clown paid no heed, its antics growing more frantic and disturbing. The room seemed to darken, the very air growing heavy with an oppressive malevolence. Suddenly a guttural voice emerged from the depths of the costume, a voice that sent shivers down my spine. "You can't escape, little one. We've been waiting for you." The word sent a surge of horror through me, and I let go of the costume as if it were searing my skin. It fell to the floor with a heavy thud, the laughter intensifying into a cacophony of madness. I stumbled back, my heart racing, as the clown's gaze fixed on me with a chilling intent. In that moment, a realization struck me. The clown was not just a relic. It was a vessel, a conduit for a malevolent entity that had lain dormant for centuries. And now it hungered for something it saw in me. With a surge of determination, I sprinted toward the exit, propelled by sheer terror and the desperate need to escape the clutches of that unholy presence. The laughter followed me, echoing through the corridors as I burst into the cool night air. Gasping for breath and covered in a cold sweat, I never returned to the restaurant again. The clown, the laughter, and the malevolent force it represented were forever etched in my nightmares. The restaurant closed its doors not long after, plagued by an unexplainable darkness that drove away both customers and staff. And as for the clown costume, it vanished without a trace, leaving only the chilling memory of its haunting dance and the malevolent laughter that still echoes in the corners of my mind. A reminder that some horrors are too real, too ancient, to ever truly escape.
Listen well, mortals, as I bestow upon you a fragment of my wisdom. Do you seek survival? Then heed this or don't, for your fate amuses me either way. Wrap your words in silence, for the echoes betray you to the unknown. The creature in the dark observes your vulnerability with each faltering breath. Trust your chilling instincts, a compass in this shadowed realm. Remember, fragile souls, your fear is your upper hand. It will guide you to decide your fate.